Now we're recording. Alright. Welcome, everybody. Today, everyone, we're going to have the listening party for the Impact of Iwata, an overclocked remix album, in partnership with Nintendo Force. And today, joining us, we have TSori, the album director. Say hi.
How's it going, everyone?
And
thanks for joining us.
We also have, joining us, the author of the book and the executive producer of the album, Lucas. Welcome, Lucas.
I'm the executive producer? Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lofty title. Hello.
I do have a voice. It's not just trumpet.
I have a question right off the bat, since we're waiting for people to stroll in still.
Okay.
How does it feel to be done? It's a question for both of you.
Done with the album, done with the book. It's a weird kind of thing doing a book project and then doing an audiobook version of that book and then working with this community to create this entire album of 16 different tracks of music to go along with the audiobook. It's kind of a large ongoing project, but yes, it is. It does feel nice to finally have this work out into the world where people can be listening to it.
For sure, for sure. Do you have any thoughts on that, TSori?
I mean, I agree. Obviously, Lucas had a much bigger and longer lasting role in trying, and it was a bigger project for him. For me, after I did the Golden Sun album a few years ago, I thought, oh, that was really fun, but I don't know that I would do it again. Just it's a lot of work and a lot of time, and then this opportunity came up, and I thought, why not? Let's jump back in. It's a cool idea, a cool project, a cool opportunity, and so it's been fun to do. I'm really glad that we're finally getting out there, because I've thought, just listening to it, that there's some real gems on the album, some of the best stuff I've heard on OCR, so it's cool to finally get to see other people getting to hear it.
Absolutely, yeah. There was some absolute diamonds on this album, for sure. Very proud of everyone who worked on it, for sure. It's so exciting that it's finally out there. So what do you say we get into a couple tracks?
Let's do it.
All right, so I'm gonna run a couple here. We're gonna start off with we're gonna go in album order, of course. So we have first up Yorito, Eggerland Swagger from Eggerland Mystery, and then next up Trait with Pocket Arcade from Pokemon Pinball. Enjoy, everybody. All right. First two tracks in the books. I love the opening, and it was so cool that both Yorito and Trait both did kind of chiptune inspired takes on their tracks, and they happen to be back to back to each other in the album. And so it
Actually,
made
one
a
of my
really
favorite,
cohesive, opening. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I was saying it was one of my favorite like happy accidents of the album is that if you kind of listen to it, the genres almost follow the chronological progression of the book. They start out really chiptuney, and then they kind of gradually phase in more live instruments and more, modern synthesizers and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. Any thoughts on the
Totally unplanned, but it works great.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on the music so far, Lucas?
Yeah, we kind of took a chronological progression through Iwata's life and career through the book. And of course, that means that you're starting out with the earliest years, the earliest stuff, the early 80s when he first got started in the video game industry. And that's challenging when it comes to thinking about how to do remixes, because a lot of that early stuff in the early 80s, those games didn't really have music. they sometimes had bleeps and bloops. His earliest games that he worked on didn't even have graphics. He programmed games for calculators that just had a numerical display, and it was all very abstract, theater of the mind kind of stuff to even understand what the gameplay was. So in brainstorming that with TSori and figuring it out, we're like, these chapters, they are kind of self-contained in small spans of years, like early 80s and stuff, but then they also encompass the entire legacy of the games that he made during that time. So the first chapter talking a lot about how he got started at HAL Laboratory, and how it was a real young kid, college age guys, just a handful of friends that went to college together that started HAL and just hung out in an apartment together and made these quirky games. And HAL's big franchise through their first 10 years was Eggerland, also known as The Adventures of Lolo. So I love that track number 1 taps into the Eggerland series. It was a perfect way to kick things off. The first real mascot character that HAL had going. Absolutely love that series. I wish it would come back. And then chapter 2, it's called The Pinball Repairman. It talks a lot about how Iwata came in and helped Nintendo figure out the physics programming to make the NES pinball game. Nintendo's own game designers, they were just befuddled. They couldn't figure out how to do it. So Iwata was this absolute programming genius straight out of college. He figured out how to make the original NES pinball game and how to make it flow, and that had a whole big legacy of its own and ended up going into Kirby's Pinball Land, and they did a game called Revenge of the Gator on the Game Boy. And so, in talking to TSori about it, I'm like, okay, chapter 2 can just be anything from the legacy of pinball. And so, yeah, you're not gonna get much remix material out of NES pinball, but the games that came on later in its legacy, there was good music to look to there.
Yeah, absolutely, they were great. And Yorito's, he loves the MSX stuff, and so he had to go to the MSX Eggerland, and then Trait doing the Pokemon pinball was just fantastic. I wanted to ask you about the impetus of the whole book as a concept. Like, how long ago did you start formulating the idea of putting that together, and what was the main reason that you decided to do it?
So we started Nintendo Force magazine back in January 2013. It came about right after Nintendo Power magazine went out of business. They announced at the end of 2012 that they were closing up shop. and that just hurt my heart as a Nintendo Power kid. And I had my firstborn son was just a young baby at the time. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna have this. I'm not gonna have my kid grow up in a world without a Nintendo magazine to read, to get delivered in the mailbox. So we made the magazine ourselves. And we did that for a couple of years, 2013, 2014. But then in the summer of 2015, just all of a sudden and kind of out of nowhere, Mr. Iwata, president of Nintendo up to that point, suddenly passed away. And we were just shocked and taken aback. And we dedicated our next whole issue of Nintendo Force to Mr. Iwata. We did a whole timeline of his career. We did the best celebration that we could. But at the same time, it was still a normal issue of our magazine, right? It still had previews of new games that were coming out. It still had reviews of games like Super Mario Maker on Wii U. That review was in that issue. So not a lot of the page count in the Iwata issue ended up getting to be dedicated to Mr. Iwata. And that just always kind of like, that didn't feel entirely right to me. It didn't feel like we had done a full and complete celebration of his life.
Right.
So years went by, and we got to the point, we hit our 10-year anniversary of publishing the magazine, and just wanted to expand, wanted to do more with the magazine, and we wanted to expand into doing books, and telling deeper stories, and, you know, tackling topics that didn't have to share their page count with previews and reviews, you know, just go full in on a single subject. And if we were going to do that, then I knew that the one subject that I wanted to explore more in depth was Satoru Iwata's life and career. And, you know, just went back and looked at that issue that we had done and kind of used the skeleton of that to begin to frame out the book, but then wildly expanded it. So if you go back and look at that old issue, you get, you know, maybe 15 to 20% of what ended up being the whole Impact of Iwata book.
Gotcha. And then it just expanded from there, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And getting to the album, if you look in the print Iwata book, at the beginning of each chapter is this cool full-color illustration commissioned different artists to do great artwork to introduce each chapter, but then realized that the audiobook wouldn't have that, right? Just being a purely audio experience, you would miss out on all of the cool artwork. And so I was just thinking, you know, what could we do to recapture that vibe, to get like the style, give somebody that's listening to it that real wow factor. And I turned to TSori, a good friend of mine, for many of years. Don't know if we can fully disclose that our family connection. TSori happens to be my cousin. But I called him up and was just brainstorming him. I was like, you know, we could have an equivalent to these full color great pieces of visual art in music form. And we could take the subject matter, each chapter talking about a different game series, and we could take music from that series and do new remixes and create this whole album that integrates into the audiobook experience, and also serves as a whole celebration of his life and career all unto itself.
Very cool. So what do you say we get into some music again?
Absolutely.
All right, so we got tracks 3 and 4 up next, which are Cyril the Wolf featuring Zach Parrish, TSori, Funky Mountain Peaks from Kirby's Dream Course, and then M1N0 with Poppin' from Balloon Fight. Enjoy! All right. You guys get your dance on after that?
Good old balloon fight.
Wouldn't be an OCR album without at least one 4 on the floor EDM track.
Yes. It got me popping, but no locking. Welcome in, everyone who's just strolling in. Welcome, Emu. Contributor to the album.
Yeah.
And yes, M1N0 is Mike Norbeck. It is the same person. So,
Going through a rebranding of all of his online presence. He's been trying to separate the two identities.
so TSori, I have a question for you.
Far away.
This one is courtesy of Lion Tamer. He wants to know if, since this was your second experience directing an album for Overclocked Remix, the first one being Golden Sun World Ignited, did you learn anything from the first time around that you applied to the Impact of Iwata?
I definitely learned a lot the first time around, but the funny thing was I didn't really need any of the lessons I learned. This album was... The Golden Sun album was kind of like a labor of love. Like, everybody on it did a great job, but it was a big, expansive organizational project and lots of checking in with people and communication. And then we started this one up, and I expected to do the same thing, and it basically just made itself. The tracks were claimed in the first 24 hours by stalwarts of the community who just kind of needed no guidance or no pushing at all. So it just kind of ran. So this one was, more or less on autopilot. I was there keeping an eye on things, but as far as getting the music made and things, it just kind of did itself. Everyone stepped up and handled it independently, and I really didn't have to do a whole lot of the organizing and the kind of checking in and monitoring that I did on the Golden Sun album. Although this one was a bit smaller. But yeah, I think the biggest lesson I got out of the Golden Sun album was just everyone warned me going into it. They said, "Oh, the album directing is a ton of time. It's a ton of time. It's a big amount of time and a lot of effort." And it's like I found was that I guess my picture of it, I imagined just kind of spending hours trying to organize things, get things ready, and it didn't really turn out that way. What it was I wouldn't say it was a lot of time, but I'd say it's like a consistent time commitment. It was 5 or 10 minutes a day, pretty much every day. And then occasionally maybe an hour or something like that, once every couple weeks or so to handle some issue. But as long as you kind of kept on top of it, it's an everyday thing and you can't really be absent for more than a couple days or things start to skitter off the rails a bit. But as long as you're consistent with it, it was a very handleable type of workload.
Right.
Even with them away. So I try to encourage people now that when I talk to them about the albums and they get kind of nervous about how much it's going to be, is that really if you just stay consistent with it, it doesn't take that much time at any given moment. It's just spread it evenly.
Right. Yeah, that's the key I've told people too is consistency when it comes to directing an album. I haven't done it, but I've been a part of enough of them where I could say, yeah, it's consistency in checking on things and just keeping everything moving. It's definitely what really, really helps propel things forward. Lucas, question for you.
Yes.
Since we were talking about his... TSori's sequel, I want to talk about what your potential follow-up to this is. I've heard you've got a follow-up or maybe another upcoming book Kickstarter. What's going on there?
Yeah. We are going back to Kickstarter in less than 2 weeks, actually, to do our second book. It's going to be NES Endings Compendium Volume 2. Last year, Volume 1 came out, Limited Run Games published that one. Basically, just a whole nostalgic celebration of the end sequences of NES games, right? Final boss fights, the credits, all the good stuff that you get as a reward at the end of a game, or does it fall flat? Do you play through an entire adventure and then just get a black screen that says, congratulations, this is the end? So it covers the good, it covers the bad. And so Volume 2 in this book series is done. We're going to Kickstarter to raise the funds to print it. and tons of great games are contained in it. It's every game that came out in the year 1990. So Super Mario Brothers 3, Castlevania 3, Ninja Gaiden 2, Star Tropics, Mega Man 3, just all sorts of hits of the 8-bit Nintendo age. So it's going to be another fun book to put out into the world.
Very cool, very cool. How soon is that going to be going to Kickstarter?
September 10th is when that Kickstarter is going to launch. And then we will start printing the book at the end of the Kickstarter. So then that'll be early to mid-October with the goal of getting the books in everybody's hands before Christmas time.
Nice, so it's already pretty much done?
It's done. We just need to... We're going through the final proofreading right now to weed out any typos that might be remaining in it. But the book is complete and it's ready to go to the printers. We just need to do the Kickstarter campaign to raise the funds to make that happen.
Nice. That's very exciting. I find it really awesome that you had something in mind to do, follow up on once this was already released. So, mine for the future.
Yeah, many more to come. Lots of interesting book projects to come in the future.
And speaking
Just
of
heard album of ending themes.
album ending things, oh, see, that's actually another question that Larry wanted me to ask you. Actually,
Ending themes album.
no, it's similar to that though. He said that he's wondering if the album concept that we did here could be applied to another 16 tracks, and did you have any interest in doing a sequel?
That directed to.
That was to you as TSori, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Interesting. So I hadn't really thought about any type of direct sequel to the book or direct sequel to the album per se. An idea I had floating around in my head for a while now is I really want to do a small, 15-track flying themes album. I haven't gotten any traction on that yet, but it's always kind of floating around in my head, and at some point the temptation will become too much to resist.
That makes sense considering your profession.
Yes, TSori in the aviation world.
You're gonna have some tracks from 1941 on there?
Could be.
I don't even know if that game has music.
It would be interesting to see what we'd get if we just opened it up and said, okay, any music that plays during a flying scene or a flying gameplay is fair game. It'd be interesting to see what we got.
It would be interesting.
I'd love to hear that. Kid Icarus Uprising. Somebody claim that one.
There you go.
Maybe limit it to one per game so we don't end up with just the entire Ace Combat soundtrack or something like that. But get some Kid Icarus. Balloon Fight even would have been fair game for that. Wing Cap themes. A lot of the JRPGs have really great flying themes too. So
Pilot Wings 64. That whole soundtrack is a vibe.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as you said that, I immediately thought of airships. So there you go.
Oh, the temptation is rising. We'll see how long I resist.
All right. So since we're talking about the future, let's take it back to the past and go back to where most people started with their gaming journey, and that was Super Mario Brothers. So up next, we've got Super Mario Brothers, Zach Parrish featuring Eminator, Life is Peachy. And after that, we have Silfer the Jackal featuring Saren's Toes, Road Rage, Mock Rider. Enjoy, everybody. All right. We went from a nice, soft, chill track in the Super Mario Brothers to some ripping metal.
Yes, the two extremes.
Yes. Actually, putting them back to back, it does work in a different kind of way. Going from high to low like that. Very cool.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I talked about in chapter 5. The swimming sections of Super Mario Brothers. They put those in the game to be a total change of pace, right? Most of the game of Super Mario Brothers, you're running, you're jumping, you're going as fast as you can, and then you hit the swimming levels and you're forced into a slower pace. The gameplay totally changes, and so I love that. I love that that's reflected on the album too. It's like you get this chill track, and you're kind of forced to vibe out for a little while, and then when that track is done, boom, the pace picks right back up again, and you're rocking out.
That's a great way to look at it. I didn't think about that at all. Very cool. Very cool. So I want to know, Mr. Lucas Thomas.
Yes.
Did you have any challenges that you faced while you were writing the book? And if so, like, how did you overcome them?
It wasn't too difficult of a book for me to write. It's TSori Iwata has been, a hero. Looked to him as a mentor figure. I could have just sat down with a notebook and sketched out the whole book with pencil and paper. So it was just a matter of taking all of that knowledge that was already living inside my nerdy fan brain and organizing it and double checking all the facts and doing research to find more interesting things to say about him that I didn't know previously, and putting it all together in book form. It wasn't too difficult my part. I had a lot of contributors.
Mm-hmm.
A couple dozen people jumped in to share their perspectives at the end of each chapter. So organizationally, that was a little bit difficult to get everybody's part in. And then to recontact all of those people and have them record their audio of their own words that they wrote for the audiobook. That was a challenge.
For sure. And I know we kind of touched base on the same kind of idea in the last bit, TSori. You were saying everything flowed pretty smoothly. Did you have any challenges that you faced in directing the album?
I think, like I said, this was pretty smooth, much smoother than expected. We had a couple challenges that were smaller ones. People having real life things that came up and pushed progress on tracks back a little bit. I think we had one person drop pretty early on that we had to replace, and then we just had some kind of a lot of it was the challenge of balancing the audiobook work and the album work, which 100% on Zach Parrish, who's in the chat, since he was mastering both. And just kind of getting everything to be finished at the same time was a challenge. I think Yorito's track was actually finished over a year ago. And he got it done within a few weeks of the album starting. And then it took us until, I think, May before we finally had all the tracks in. And then we were working on the audiobook for a while. And there were still a couple times some of the remixers on the album came back with a couple last minute changes that got made. So it was just try to get all these different pieces to line up at the same time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, it really seemed to flow smoothly as well. It was very, very cool to see it go, and again, an honor to be a part of it and involved in any way as well. So, back to some more music. Moving ahead. Next one up, we've got Zaleph featuring a massive list of characters here. Who do we have? Chromatic Apparatus, Point Blanket, Sable Providence, Sealfur the Jackal, and TSori. From Dragon Warrior, A Translator's Tale. And then after that, we have Wispy Woodwinds, who consists of Lucas Gamares, Gamer of the Winds, Stephen Higby, and Andrew Gossett. And they are doing Parasol to the Stars from Kirby's Adventure. Enjoy, everybody. All right. Such fun music. Again, another big contrasting true. We go from, big orchestral and
Hmm.
metal orchestral or orchestral rock, whatever you want to call it, to a small chamber ensemble.
Yes, the absolute the epic length of the Dragon Quest track, I think, is perfectly appropriate. this the grandeur of the Dragon Quest franchise demanded the longest track on the album.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me about the audiobook. How was the process of recording that audiobook, and should should we hear some outtakes maybe from to the OCR community?
Recording the audiobook was interesting in that I had to do my best to like MacGyver together a quiet recording space here in my home, guided by Zach Parrish, who listened to a first couple of my first attempts. I ended up creating this. I like pushed a bed up on its side and created this whole like blanket igloo fort to deafen the sounds from outside, to create a space where I could record my voice well enough and cleanly enough for Zach to then take and master for the final audiobook. Zach Parrish is the the champion, the king, the real MVP of both the audiobook and the album, mastering everything together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He put in a lot of time, and I think we were all very grateful for his work. Definitely
Track
put in...
contribution was pretty great too.
Yes, absolutely. I to my memory right now, and I might be wrong on this, but I think his was the last direct post remix accepted. So I could be wrong on that, but I think he's got the distinction of holding the last direct post remix for OCR. Anyways, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying, I noticed some conversation in the chat about his orchestral chops too. He and I have been we've done a couple collaborations lately. I've gotten to record for him. And that's a blast because he writes really cool stuff for me to get to, write his coattails on. But they have been without fail all of my wife's favorite recordings that I've done. She has a high standard when it comes to my remixes. Most of them she's not all that fond of, but all the ones that I've done with him, she loves. So, praise.
Very nice. Very nice. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, just fine.
Really weird. Anyways, I just seeing some visual glitch, I guess, because it looked like my voice wasn't coming through for some reason. So it was tripping me out.
You're all good.
So aside from, for TSori, aside from putting together your own track, what surprised you the most about the creative process of the Impact of Iwata album?
Be kind of a lame answer, but the part that surprised me most was how much stuff I got asked to do on it. We did this, we started it up, after Lucas and I talked through it, and I thought, okay, yeah, I'll direct it. And I thought, well, only a 16-track album. I'm probably not going to get asked to collab on anything, so I better make sure I claim one track so that I at least can have a cameo on the album. And then I got asked to record 6 of them, I think. And you talked about challenges earlier. Yeah, finding the time to record all that stuff was a challenge. But it was really cool. The breadth of stuff I got to end up getting to record on and be a part of was just awesome. Like Zalef's track, we just listened to a little while ago. I was surprised that I got asked to play on that, and then I got to play on so much of it. And it was a really cool and unexpected thing on that track, in that, it's this big symphonic rock type of piece. And yet when you look at the trumpet parts, the writing is very, very classical and
Yes.
very or set up like that. And so when I went to play it, I'm like, well, there's really no other way to do it. And so I did some of probably the most classical style playing I've done on any remix on a big, heavy symphonic rock track of all things. And it was just fun. There's several more coming up, including yours, Emo, that I got to be part of, that were just... I think all 6 tracks, they were wildly different genres and wildly different approaches and different teams. It was really cool to get to be part of that and to get to see kind of from front row seats on each of these individuals' creative processes. To some degree, you talk to all the remixers on the album, but when you get to collab on a track or record, you get a much clearer view of exactly, how they're iterating on it, what the works in progress are like as they're going through it. Emulators, which will come up later, was fascinating to watch take shape because it went through so many changes and so much development.
Absolutely. I do have more questions, but I will save them for more breaks in the future. We'll move on to some more music. Coming up, we've got Ridley Snipes featuring Earth Kid. I believe it's pronounced Bonhomme de Neige from Earthbound, Snowman. And then after that, we have Emunator with a massive cast of collaborators. So, Gold Soul from Pokemon Soul Silver version, Emunator featuring C and DR, Eric WK, Lucas Gamariz. Hold on. I'm even struggling to go through this list because it just skipped through all of the performers. Lucas Gamarez, Marissa Ternage, Zach Parrish, Andrew Gossett, Andrew Steffen, Brandon Harnish, Chromatic Apparatus, Gamer of the Winds, Stephen Higby, TSori, Wispy Woodwinds. And that was on Eminator's track. And then after that, we have Violent Desert Smash from Super Smash Brothers series. Enjoy, everybody. How about that for a section? Those were all epic tracks.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All around.
Good stuff.
Next up, we got music by myself, music by TSori. Do you want to talk about our tracks, or should we talk about other stuff?
I think we can talk about our stuff after they play.
Okay.
I did want to take a moment just to talk about the 3 that we just heard.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Because they're all fantastic. And so kind of a funny thing about Ridley's track when that came up was I started planning this album out, and I asked Lucas, in terms of genre and selection, basically what was he looking for, what was he not looking for, and he basically said anything goes. The only real rule he gave was only real rules he gave were that the source had to be readily identifiable. So be creative, but don't go too overboard, and that there be no vocals, because he didn't want to confuse the narration with the stuff that's in the music. And wouldn't you know, as soon as I put those 2 rules in the Discord chat about it, the number of times I got asked, so I can have lyrics, right? Or I can have vocals, right? It's like, no! Stop it! Quit asking! And it just over and over again. And Ridley and I went back and forth because I thought we had an understanding on it, and then later he came back and he says, yeah, so it's going well, I'm just waiting on Earth Kid's vocal parts. It's like, wait, you what? But no, he clarified. He says, no, there's no lyrics. It's just vocals. I went, all right, that should work. And I'm so glad that he did do it that way, because Earth Kid's parts of that track just really make the track. It sounds fantastic. Her voice is incredible. It was comical. 16 tracks. How many different people asked, so can we do vocals?
I remember that. I remember that.
Wow. I didn't realize it would be that much of a problem. Like I thought it would be confusing, to be listening to me speaking the words aloud in the audiobook and then have a different voice coming in and singing lyrics in a song and then back to me, and I thought that the way to keep that confusion off the table was just to keep the vocals out of the tracks.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I thought it made sense too, and I thought, oh, that's no big deal at all. We get like a lyrics or a vocal overclock remix like one out of every 40 or 50 tracks, it feels like. So surely not. It was just funny. It came up, but yeah, I'm glad it played out the way it did. Ridley's track was fantastic. Immunator's track, I'm admittedly madly in love with. It's just such a cool track, and I remember listening to the works in progress of it, and then kind of hoping and thinking, oh, please put a brass part in it. Please put a part in it so I can be on the track. And then he came back and said, yeah, we're working on the brass part. I was like, yes!
The struggle was worth it, Immunator.
Oh yeah, and I was ecstatic to get to play on that track. So it's really great stuff. And then Violence. The word that always comes to mind with Violence music is just slick. His production and how well he does everything, his soundscape and his sample selection is just incredible. We worked together on the final track on the Golden Sun album that was the K-pop one with the 2 Korean singers, and Violence a blast to work with. He has such cool ideas about how to make that kind of music come to life.
Absolutely. Standouts and all super strong. That's across the entire album. Like, everyone brought their A game. Everyone did amazing work. I'm so glad with how it all turned out. Anything else before we move on?
Let's get into the Hemo and TSori tracks. Let's listen.
Before we go into these, I do want to say how we did not plan for these both to be similar in a way. But when you listen to them back to the back, they might even end in the same key, I'm not sure, but it almost sounds like 2 tracks on the same professional album, because I think part of it has to do with the fact that you played trumpet on both tracks. And so you've got that similarity going for us, but they sound similar.
Instrumentation.
Yeah, there's similar instrumentation, but I don't know. It's and at one point too, we thought exactly what Eminator just said. We thought that National Park was going to be the first one, and mine was going to be in the middle. So the order was wrong, and so it was going to be the three together, and it seemed like that would be like even its own little block, and then it changed. So because the track order was wrong, I guess. But anyway,
we're still having confusions about track order right up until literally a few hours before launch.
Yeah, I corrected some of that when I was making the long play video for YouTube. And by the way, that is the first time OCR has done a long play video for an album. And that is something that had been requested a lot. And so I was happy to oblige, even though it did take a long time to put it together. But yes, coming up next, we've got my track first, Hemophiliac, featuring Gamer of the Winds with TSori, Lucas Gamariz, and Travis Kindred. And then we've got, that was Wii Sports Sports Ball. Next after that is TSori and Flake, featuring Z-Mand 97, Andrew Gossett, let's see, Sean R. Hansen, Kestrel Girl, who else? Violin Gamer, Optimation, Anime Vivi and Chromatic Apparatus, Kaylin Scott, Thomas, Miyuk, and I Crescendo.
The soonest.
Yes, Think on Your Feet from Brain Age. Enjoy, everybody. Like I said, they go so well together back to back. Zalif wants to know who did the piano on that last one. TSori.
That was Z-Man 97.
There you go. Yep, and that this track
Big congrats on finding music that was remixable within the Brain Age series. I know that was a challenge.
Yeah, so funny story about that. Like I mentioned earlier, when we started doing the album, I thought, I better grab a track so that I can at least have a part on it. I thought, I'll grab Brain Age. Probably no one's going to want that. And we had it on DS growing up, and my family actually played a lot of it. I thought, that'd be great. And so I claimed it, and then I went and listened to the soundtrack, and I went, what have I done? There's no melody in any of these tracks, and they're all like 8-second loops. So yeah, then it was just a big, what did I get myself into? But I had this idea for it. I thought, well, if I can't really do anything with melody, let's make it something that's just really rhythmically focused. And fun fact about me, when I was in college, I was a really active street dancer, did lots of locking and funk style dance and stuff. So I really like this kind of 70s disco funk type of music. And I watched a lot of dance battles and been in a few, and we usually pick the sections of the music that's much more rhythmically based. I thought, okay, well, let's take that approach with it. And I have been in a slump for arrangement for like a year now, where I've been working on things, but I haven't managed to crank out an arrangement 100% on my own for, I guess, since I started my current job. So I went to Flake, which I don't know if anybody hasn't worked with Flake before, you absolutely should. He is just boundlessly creative. Yes. Has the wackiest, most interesting ideas. So I pitched him this, and he said, "Yeah, let's do that." And we traded the arrangement back and forth. Doing 30 seconds of it at a time, and rewriting each other's stuff. And it's actually a really fun way to do this. And kind of true to the whole name convention of the song is the think of your feet idea, or being quick on your feet and improvisational. We didn't write the drum parts, either the hand percussion or the drum set, or the guitar part, or the bass part. I think we wrote a couple sections of the bass part, and we basically left it up to a lot of the collaborators to come up with their own ideas. So the guitar parts, we gave chord structures and kind of a general idea to Kalen Scott Thomas, and he came up with his own guitar riff, which was awesome. We gave the bassoonist free rein on the drum set parts, and their work was fantastic. Same with Sean Hansen, all the hand percussion, Muick on the bass. So yeah, it was a very improvisational effort, and even the arrangement was extremely collaborative. So it was a lot of fun, and I feel like it fits the theme of the track of just being quick on your feet and improvisational and solving problems as they come.
Awesome. I have to give a quick shout out to Zach Parrish again, because he found me drum brush samples to use for my track, because I wanted to use that kind of sound and that vibe of a small combo context, and I could not find any good ones at all, especially having stirring. Oh man, it was such a struggle, and he found some free ones for me, because there's plenty of pay ones out there, but at that time I was kind of broke. I didn't really have a job, so thank you for that. And then also Eurito found me Travis Kindred at the last minute too, so I could get live upright bass in my track as well, because I didn't know of anybody who played live bass, or acoustic bass I should say. So it was all nice, awesome experience with everybody.
One more shout out, I don't think we listed him when we were talking through it earlier, but Pocket Crow did all the mixing on my track, because I'm garbage when it comes to mixing and production. I just like to play. That's all I got. But it was the first time I'd actually worked with him, and I just kind of put out an APB asking for someone who would be interested in mixing the track, and he jumped in and volunteered, and thought, all right, we'll see how it goes. And as they say, he understood the assignment perfectly. He had exactly the right sensibilities of how things should be balanced, how it should sound, how the genre should work, and so now he's become like my go-to guy for mixing.
Nice.
So big shout out to him too for just nailing it right off the bat.
Before we move on, I have a question for you, Lucas.
Okay.
I want to know about how you found Overclock Remix. Tell me about that story.
Well, I was just looking up the date of OC Remix being founded to remind myself. 25th anniversary this year. So OC Remix started in 1999, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, I was just, I'm old enough that I was already plugged into the internet world and the video game parts of the internet as the internet was being created and migrating to everybody's homes through the 90s. And so yeah, I think that I was aware of OC Remix almost from the very start, and yeah, just loved absolutely everything that the community was putting out. I had a friend of mine in college. This was around the time when Super Smash Bros. Melee was coming out, so 2001. So yeah, real early on. But he was real excited about the OC Remix community, and he was working on remixes that he was planning to submit. And just got me turned on to the whole scene. And I think that I'm remembering correctly, but I think that I may have been the one to tell TSori about OC Remix to begin with. I'm just saying.
Is that true?
You were indeed. I remember you were visiting with us, and you showed me this site, and you showed me 2 remixes to start off with: Gerudo Peoples and Team Gato.
Okay.
Yes,
heard
Team
Team Gato.
Gato, the classic.
I do like
Makes
Gerudo
an
Peoples.
impression.
It's a good track.
Yeah, after that I was hooked on it too. And that it must have been pretty shortly after you found it, because I think it was probably still 2001.
Yeah, it was early on.
Nice. I was gonna ask TSori the same question, but that basically answered it for me. We both led it to each other, essentially.
Well, there you go. Yeah,
Very
we
cool.
were, I and my brothers were video game kids, loved our Nintendo systems, and, TSori and his siblings would meet up with us at family events, and we would talk video games together, and, so it was only natural to talk with him about video game music and this cool new community I had found, and point him in that direction. And lo and behold, he took off and ran with it. Became a big contributor in this community.
Absolutely.
Funny how it worked out. It certainly took a long while. I think they made a comment, or DJP made a comment about it when I had my first remix posted, but it was from like the time I joined when I finally got something posted was like 17 years. I was just a lurker and listener for a very long time. When I moved back from overseas a few years ago, kind of one of my new goals was I'm going to start recording and I'm going to get something on Overclock. And after I got one, it just kind of ballooned, and I stopped doing much of any other type of music and just do lots of Overclock now, which is fun.
Nice.
An endless stream of fun stuff to play and interesting projects, so it's great. And I think right after we got that first track posted, I mentioned it to Lucas, and he said, "Oh wow, we should figure out a way to partner up Nintendo Force and Overclock at some point in the future." And that was a good 7 or so years ago, so I'm glad we finally got to do it.
Made it happen eventually.
I'm very glad that you reached out to TSori to do that, and it was a great idea because, again, I said it so many times, this project turned out fantastic. Everyone did amazing work. I'm so proud of everyone's work. It's one of the best albums that OCR has done in a while, in my opinion. So it feels like a throwback to me, like to the old school albums. They were kind of variety, mixture of everybody's efforts. So yeah, absolutely. Eminator said, yeah, the community side of OCR is one of a kind, and this album was a perfect encapsulation of that. I agree completely. So next up, we have something rather unique, as in it's not video game music, but it's actually arrangement of the Nintendo Direct music.
Yeah, so it's video game adjacent. It's video game marketing music.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting idea to include that. It was a branch out for the community, and you know, I think it paid off. So we've got that next, and that is Ian Martin with the Direct Jangle from Nintendo Direct. And then after that, so we're gonna play these next two, and then we'll play the last one by itself. So after Ian Martin's, we've got The Voodoo Queen featuring Zach Parrish, CNDR, TSori, and Gamer of the Winds, Chozo Dynamic from Metroid Prime and Super Metroid. Alright guys, enjoy. So we've come to the end. One track remains.
Indeed, we've arrived.
Do you guys have any thoughts you'd like to mention before we move on to the
Yeah,
final track?
I was actually going to ask if Lucas wouldn't mind expanding on chapter 15 of the book a little bit. I've had, as I've kind of passed information around to different people as we're getting this album out, I had a lot of questions about, chapter 15 and the man who never said no. A couple people came up and said, "Wait, Metroid Prime? What?" So yeah, Lucas, if you wouldn't mind taking a couple minutes, just kind of expand on what that chapter is all about.
Right. So chapter 15 in the book is kind of the miscellaneous catch-all chapter. I write about how Mr. Iwata's influence and the franchises that he worked on, he worked on so many different things, and his involvement in so many different series was so behind the scenes and so invisible, especially after he became the president of Nintendo. He had his finger on the pulse of absolutely everything that they did. And one of the first things that he did, he came in, it was the GameCube era, whenever he became president of Nintendo. And so Metroid Prime was one of the big games that he really helped to guide. And the book itself doesn't even go into it that much. It just I couldn't contain everything. So yes, chapter 15 is my admission that his impact was so large and so far-reaching that I couldn't possibly contain everything. So I love that the album has Metroid Prime represented, because this is like an expansion. It's going beyond even what was in the printed book.
Very cool. Very cool. So I heard about this next track by Michael Hudak. He's arranging Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I've had multiple people comment about how appropriate and fitting this track is as a closer to the album.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys agree with that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree. Breath of the Wild was in development while Mr. Iwata was still with us. He was a part of, some of the first reveals, some of the first gameplay showcases of the game while it was still in the works. But the final game didn't come out until nearly 2 years after he passed away. And the developers had a chance in that time, while they were, finishing up development, while they were polishing the game, to include some direct homages to him, some direct references to Iwata in Breath of the Wild. There's an NPC character that looks just like him that is patrolling the area down around the foothills of TSori mountain. And then if you go up on the mountain, you can find the character called the Lord of the Mountain. It's kind of a difficult quest to find him up there. He's not there all the time, but he looks like this mystical deer horse, this like otherworldly majestic being. You can actually ride him as a horse, the funniest thing. But then you explore further and you find this little bit of flavor text at this abandoned campsite on TSori Mountain, and this information and the recording, like if you take a picture of the Lord of the Mountain and it records to your in-game beast log, whatever it's called, it explains, this creature is the reincarnation of the spirit of a great lost sage. Just absolutely phenomenal that they would include that. And yeah, so there was no better way to close out the album than a great remix of a great track from Breath of the Wild.
Very good. And
He'd
lastly,
had.
I'm sorry, TSori, go ahead.
I was just gonna comment. Yeah, we had when we first started putting the album together and the track list for the claims. Most of the chapters were very open ended. You know, anything from this series or anything from this collection of franchises. There were a couple that were more narrow, like the water level music from Super Mario Brothers, and this one. And the original plan was to use the TSori Mountain music in Breath of the Wild, but we realized very quickly music is basically one chord. It's just held, maybe two chords, and it just all back and forth, and there's no melody. It's just long tones, and Mike Hudak jumped on it pretty quickly, but he said he wanted to do the music for the dragons instead, and we kind of went back and forth, and we're like, well, and it's not Satori Mountain directly. It was like, but it's very much got the right kind of feel, and it's from Breath of the Wild, and it has that same type of mystic feel. So we said, okay, go for it. And yeah, he was absolutely the right guy to do that track, and that was the right choice of the track to do because I think he really nailed the feeling and the mood that Lucas was going for, and that we wanted to close out the album.
Awesome. And then Lucas, for the Impact of Iwata, why should someone read the book?
And anything that you have ever enjoyed from the company of Nintendo has ties back to the life and career of Satoru Iwata. He had a direct influence on so many different games and series. He had an indirect influence on everything else. Uh, and even today, the developers that are working there are striving to follow after his example, his great leadership. He's the best president the company ever had. Absolute visionary, wonderful, wonderful man. And you should want to know more about his life so that you can better appreciate your hobby, better appreciate this world of video games that gives rise to the world of video game music that fuels this entire community.
Awesome. And so once again, I put the link in the chat again, nintendoforcemagazine.com/category/books. And then you can get the album at iwata.ocremix.org. I hope you guys all check it out. Enjoy it both. You know, support Lucas. He's got another Kickstarter coming out in the near future. And we're going to get started with the last track here. Michael Hudak, Guided to the Infinite from Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end.
The award for most jarring transition goes to ending Mike's track and then starting the Kirby music.
I mean, well, look at the name of it. Tower to the Sky.
There you go. Perfect.
I really appreciate everyone for coming out. Thank you, Mr. Lucas Thomas, for joining us as special guest. And thank you, TSori,
Thank you for having me.
joining us as well as album director. Again, make sure you guys go to the websites and check out the book get the book and get the album. The links are above in the chat. And again, thank you for all coming out. I had a great time. I hope you guys had a great time as well. It was a labor of love to put it all together for everybody, I'm sure.
Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight, and for everyone that was on the album, thanks so much. You brought your A game and made it a fantastic experience.
All right, everybody. Good night. Thank you.